beating a dead horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller. Holy shit. This is Uncut Gems, everybody. Holy fuck.
Yes, I am very excited to talk about this movie. I've been brimming with it for about a year now. I wrote a review for it back at 25 Years Later site. Then I fucking loved this movie. It is intense. It is frustrating in the most intentional, great ways. It is nerve-wracking. It made me care about a fucking sport. It is a good movie, and we haven't even mentioned that Adam Sandler is in it.
Adam Sandler. So, like, when you hear people say that Adam Sandler turns in a good performance, as I heard, that's shocking, right? But not the most shocking. Like, he's been in other dramatic movies and even been acclaimed for those movies. Like I haven't watched it, but he was in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah. And a couple other things here and there. But, when I hear Adam Sandler is capable of being a good dramatic actor, I imagine, watching Adam Sandler, but he's doing a drama this time, and he's got some real emotion. It's a good performance. I didn't doubt that. But Uncut Gems, this is some Daniel Day-Lewis shit. It's actually amazing, and I'm sure that I am the 500,000 millionth person to fucking say this. But even with actors that I Leonardo DiCaprio is a great example. I love me some Leo, a big simp for Leo. But the thing about Leo is that, with a few exceptions, I'm always very cognizant of the fact that I'm watching Leo. Call it that old, movie star, Sheen. That was always sort of the appeal of, a Tom Cruise or a John Wayne. He didn't go to see Jack Reacher. You went to see Tom Cruise. That was the appeal of the old movie star thing. So... But even for actors that do go for it more, Leo goes for it more. He went for it a lot. That man had something to prove until he got that Oscar, which I can very confidently say Adam Sandler does not. But so no matter how good a Leo performance is, there's always that element where I'm looking at Leo and I'm watching it because I like Leo. Adam Sandler, while I am watching Uncut Gems, I am not once thinking about the fact that this is Adam fucking Sandler in front of me. And I feel like that's a truly sublime performance where they are completely lost in the character. You're not thinking about outside franchising. You're not looking at Robert Downey Jr. and thinking oh, that's Iron Man. You're not thinking about the actor. That is a man who is embodying his character. And that is fucking Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. And it's unbelievable that he's this good. Oh my God.
In my review, I even mentioned, I am the type of person who has had a weird thing with Adam Sandler, and that I liked him growing up. I've seen a lot of his movies, a surprising amount of his movies, a shameful amount of his movies, and then really fell off and realized how much of kind of a hack fraud he is. So I am incredibly aware of Adam Sandler. However, Uncut Gems, Jackson's right. I'm the most incredible thing about Uncut Gems is it made me forget that I was watching Adam Sandler, and has hitherto changed the way I perceive Adam Sandler as both a person and an actor.
Oh, 100%.
I said half a second ago that he is a hack fraud, and you know what? He kind of is, but he also is just a dude who is very, very fucking talented, just getting paychecks for him and the people who want to do movies with him. And you know what? Honestly, I respect the fucking hustle. I have such weird newfound respect for him after watching Uncut Gems, because he has proved himself, a man who had nothing to prove, a man who released Grown Ups 2, came out and proved himself in Uncut Gems for no reason other than to be y'all, you want to watch me be Howard Ratner? Watch me be Howard fucking Ratner. and it was incredible.
Yeah, I guess it's worth mentioning my history with Adam Sandler, as it were, because I did not grow up watching Adam Sandler. I don't think I've seen any of the movies that people actually like that are like, Adam Sandler movies, like not like this. The only Adam Sandler movies I had seen were Jack and Jill and Pixels, two of the worst films of all time.
That was such a mistake. For context, the reason that Jackson has seen those two movies is because the group that I have previously mentioned, our old roommate and Sam, my girlfriend, we watched a lot of movies together, including the last week that we were all together in Columbus in college. The hovel that we lived in did not have air conditioning, and it was so fucking hot. We spent a week around 5 o'clock in Sam's apartment, which did have air conditioning, watching just the worst movies we could think of. And it did culminate in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which we've talked about previously, which is a quietly hidden masterpiece. But we also watched Jack and Jill, Pixels, and The Love Guru.
Can't forget about The Love Guru.
Can't forget about The Love Guru. But those are three movies that I want scrubbed from my brain. It was a decision we made.
It sure was. So by the time I had anything resembling an opinion on Adam Sandler, like he had already cashed out. But I completely agree with Sean. Like Adam Sandler is Hollywood's biggest Chad. Like this is like no, I'm serious. Like this is like, he's seen as like this huckster clown. Like nobody takes him seriously. That like, he just milks money like from lowbrow, like, people who don't watch movies and don't care and they just want to go see the funny man fall down.
We haven't even seen apparently his worst movie yet. He promised after Uncut Gems that the next movie he would make would be the worst one he's ever made if he didn't win an Oscar for it, and he hasn't. So buckle up, y'all.
I mean, I cannot possibly imagine how he could top Pixels or Jack and Jill. I actually think that this is like a Lovecraft thing, that like when this movie is shown at his premiere, like Azathoth, the dreamer, will wake up and our universe will end. Like that's how bad the movie is. But
for context, after talking about Pixels and Jack and Jill, two of Adam Sandler's most maligned movies, like no one likes those movies. We have not seen, on how good Uncut Gems is, we have not seen an equal and opposite reaction from him yet. Like, I don't think that Jack and Jill serves as an equal and opposite reaction to Uncut Gems, because Uncut Gems is such a fucking masterpiece. Jack and Jill is terrible, but it is not the garbage fire that shall summon the sleeping ones from the dead city of Riley.
No, so look forward to that. That's how 2020 is going to end, people. He warned us. But Adam Sandler, I mean, he's like, I'm going to do the thing, all right? I'm going to make a fucking Dragon Ball comparison. So, in Bad Show Dragon Ball Super, there's a boring character named Jiren. The only noteworthy thing about Jiren is that, like, he's the strongest boy ever. And the whole premise is there's this tournament, and we're going to lead up to the fight with Jiren. And Jiren, at any time, could just, like, flex his eyebrow. He could, like, he's literally so much stronger than everyone else, he could wiggle his eyebrow and solo the tournament instantly. But he just doesn't do that. I don't know why, but he just doesn't. And that's Adam Sandler.
Isn't that just the plot of the Cell tournament? Just as an aside, isn't that just the Cell tournament again? The Cell games again?
Well, so Cell had more of a reason. It's a whole different thing.
But don't get into it. Then I apologize.
I was gonna say not quite, but close. So that's Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler has been a Daniel Day-Lewis tier fucking talent the whole time, and he has been going his whole career, like making this lowbrow stuff, making a lot of money, like, paying people to go on vacation with Kevin James and David Spade. And
that's the only way you can get anybody to go on vacation with Kevin James. Hey, Kevin James might be a nice guy. I genuinely don't know. I'm sorry, Kevin.
But like, how how secure in yourself do you have to be like be hiding your power level on your like dramatic movies so much and have this reputation as Adam fucking Sandler and then just like strut out here, be Howard Ratner, and then just go back, presumably go back to being Adam Sandler after that. Like, imagine, like, Adam Sandler's not gonna sit here, like, you know, eating a fucking bear liver, like, trying to get the Oscar. Like, he knows.
He doesn't have to. We all know now. He has shown us what he is capable of, and we are afraid. We fear for the power that Adam Sandler brings to the screen at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm really banging on about Adam Sandler here, but mostly it's because, like, this is his movie.
We do need to sell people on this movie, and opening up with it's an Adam Sandler movie is not the way to do it. And so we need to be like, no, it is the movie to watch.
Well, I was gonna say, like, even beyond that, like, it's not just like if you've just heard that like it's a movie and Adam Sandler is good at it. Adam Sandler is amazing in it.
Yeah,
like, Adam Sandler was robbed at the Oscars,
and it's a good movie. Outside of that, like Uncut Gems, we were talking in the pre-discussion. Apparently, at one point they were looking at having Jonah Hill play Howard Ratner in Uncut Gems, and I like gut check was just like the movie would have sucked. And Jackson was like, "No, I mean Jonah Hill's not bad in it. You saw him in Wolf of Wall Street, like he played a very similar character. It would have been fine." And I'm like, "No, I mean you're right, but." I think the problem is that Jonah Hill would have delivered a movie that would have been like, this was a good movie. We enjoyed watching it, and it wasn't
100%.
bad.
100%.
But Adam Sandler elevates it from a good movie to a fucking masterpiece. Like, my gut check reaction is entirely because I can't see Howard Ratner as anyone other than Adam Sandler at this point. He played the role that fucking well.
Yeah, and it's so amazing because it's not like a super original character or anything, but like it's such a unique performance. Like, he makes it feel like a super original character. Like, that's the thing, is that like everything about this movie is on point. And there's a lot of really, really great stuff outside of Adam Sandler, but like he is the core. He is the nucleus that makes Uncut Gems worth watching. And absolutely.
Well, if you've stuck with us this long, and I realize that I've been trying to give plot summaries more readily available in our episodes, but I haven't yet because we both just went off on a tear about how good Adam Sandler is in this movie, which is not something I ever thought I would say on this podcast until I saw Uncut Gems. And then I'm like, nope, never mind. I take it all back. Adam Sandler's a fucking mad god. But if you are unfamiliar with Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler plays Howard Ratner, a man with clearly some crippling gambling problems. And a gem of uncut black opal, and Kevin Garnett is there, and Lakeith Stanfield is there, and Idina is there, and Adela Dazeem, Idina Menzel. Okay, I don't know if anyone else remembers this. I know Sam does. I know a lot of people do, but I don't know if you remember this, Jackson. All right. At one point, I don't remember who is giving her the award, but he butchered her name so badly. He's like, and the winner for best singing is Adela Dazeem, and it was Idina Menzel, and it is. Sam does this to me all the time, and so like you heard me stumble over her name there, and it's because I genuinely went, fuck, what's the right name?
I was gonna say, I was wondering about that because you got it right the first time. I don't remember this instance, but you like doubted yourself and then said the fake one.
Oh my god! I was trying to figure it out. I was looking up who said Adela Dazeem, and when you search Adela Dazeem on Google, before you even hit enter, underneath it says actress Idina Menzel. It was John Travolta, by the way.
Oh. Man, John Travolta really wanted his Uncut Gems moment with the fanatic, didn't he?
Oh, the fanatic. Anyway, so it's all about this stone that's going back and forth, and Howard trying to get out of debt using the stone and pay everybody back, but also he has a crippling gambling problem, and it gets him on to all sorts of wacky hijinks. And by wacky hijinks, I mean some of the tensest situations you will ever see on film. This was my second time watching this movie, and my stomach was still in knots through most of it, even knowing what was coming. it's an incredibly well-crafted movie.
It rides a line really well because it is super duper tense. I agree, which I want to come back to because Howie isn't exactly, the easiest character to root for. So that, that's the thing we kind of keep coming back to. But
he's a sack of shit. Let's not beat around the bush. He's so fucked up. He's so fucked up.
The most charitable thing you could say about him, the nicest thing is that, he's a wounded animal. So, that's about the level we're operating at here. But, with the tension, though, before I guess we dive into, the morality of his character, it's so interesting because I think the movie does, ride a line between being really genuinely tense and, still being, darkly comedic and kind of glib. The way that I was sort of thinking about the movie, after I had gotten done watching it, it's like if Eddie from Ed, Edd n Eddy grew up to be interacting with loan sharks in the mafia. Some of Howie's plans are on that tier. My man's making some Death Note keikakus to try and sell this stone. And that's part of the fun of it. There's something about a protracted scheme that's just inherently fun, yet also the movie does such a good job of making, twisting your stomach at the same time. It's a really interesting dynamic. I don't know if you agree with that or if you felt mostly just the tension, but
no, I mean, I entirely do. I think this movie rides a lot of highs and lows in a really interesting way. And I have a whole big thesis about this movie that I want to talk about in spoilers. I'm not going to talk about it now because it will ruin the movie for everyone. But no, I think that there is a lot of highs and lows. This movie is an absolute, we tossed around the term roller coaster, and this is a roller coaster, right? Hands down. You go uphill, you feel your stomach well up as you're looking at the cliff that is coming. The cliff happens and you just it drops out from under you and is gone in a second, and then you're just kind of riding the fun, and then the next hill comes up and it there's that well again. Oh god. And I mean, this is the epitome of a roller coaster movie in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I kind of want to talk about more about the likability of his character, but I feel that requires spoilers. So I'm not sure how much I have to say pre-spoilers, except for this one extra little shout out that I want to give is that God, I know nothing about sports. Kevin Garnett. All right, sick. I know nothing about sports, and I saw him. And obviously, knowing nothing about sports, I couldn't tell immediately if that was him. I assumed that once they started showing basketball footage, they got a real player, but that could always be an actor. That wasn't an actor. That was him. That was Kevin Garnett, and he's actually really good and really convincing, and fucking shout out, dude. Oh my god.
There is every actor in this movie is incredibly well casted and acts their fucking heart out in a way that this whole movie becomes very much a living thing. It does not feel like you are watching a movie. It feels like you are watching a week in the life of New York, in that everyone in it is just there being themselves, doing what they do and not acting, which is incredible. I mean, sports people moving into acting is pretty hit and miss, to say the least. But it pulls it off in this really, really well. And it goes out to even just background tertiary characters, in that there are a lot of people in this movie who are not actors at all. And in fact, the Safdie brothers just pulled them off the street and you guys run a pawn shop. Can we shoot in here? And will you be in the movie? And they are. And it's great because they're just playing themselves, doing what they usually do, and it adds so much character to everything going on in the film. It's wonderful.
No, you never once ever see a character and think oh, what a cringe extra. No, it's completely convincing at all times.
Also, Keith Stanfield is there, and I love Lakeith Stanfield, and like it's so weird because I have like face blindness for him. I think partially because every role he like takes on an entirely different persona and is incredible in all of them. I mean, like compare this to him in Knives Out to Sorry to Bother You, where he is very different in all of them, but just an absolute joy to watch. Just as a complete aside, but also. To Jackson's sports point, I also know nothing about sports. I love this movie. It made me care about a basketball game. And I think that if you don't know anything about sports, there's almost a little bit of an extra layer of perverse joy in watching it because there's a very important game that takes place throughout the course of this movie. You might be able to piece it together if you're familiar with who Kevin Garnett is and some of the stuff that's happening around the time period of the movie. But like, if you don't know what that is, it adds another layer to the movie. If you do, I feel like there's enough weird little nitty gritty specifics that you're still going to get a lot out of it. So just enjoy the movie, even if you don't like sports. I promise it's really, really good.
I am the most least sportsman in the world, and I have never been more invested in a fucking basketball game. Like, never in my life. Yeah, and with I can imagine that if you are familiar with this scenario and with this game, like, I imagine it was designed to work both ways, as like really tense in one way and like almost creating some sort of expectation about like how things are going to go down and people who already know. And yeah, I think it's probably works either way.
It also does a really wonderful job of making you understand what it feels like to bet, which is wild in its own right. Like, just as someone who has a joking addiction to opening cards, like I was really into Magic for a while. I'm getting into Pokemon right now. I
joking for now.
Leave me alone. But I like opening card packs. And like, there are moments of this movie that recreates the high of opening a card pack and getting something good. Like, I recently pulled like a $500 Pokemon card that we already sold. Don't come steal it from me. It's gone. It's out of the house. I promise. But there's a moment where Howard hits on a bet and he's sitting in the back of a car just like gasping and just like freaking out, and like you could feel the adrenaline. And I'm like, I literally just experienced that exact thing like a month ago, and it was the wildest experience. So like, this movie does a really good job of recreating the highs of hitting on a good bet, which is basically what Pokemon cards are. I won't lie to anyone here. But I guess also on the same line of that, if you're the type of person that's sensitive to betting, watch out for this movie. This is not like a warning I was planning on putting in here, but like, even as I'm talking about it, I feel like this is the type of thing that could trigger some anxiety, PTSD, or other such traumas. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, that is a pretty good point. If you know that your life has been heavily impacted by like gambling addiction, whether that's because like, you know, you've struggled with it or like a family member has, you know, I can't say that I've personally had that experience, but I can say that, considering like how realistic the movie feels and like kind of the dregs that we reach at points and like how like hard to watch it is. Yeah, this is not, you know, you could probably skip it in that case.
You know yourself better than we do. Just be aware that there is a large betting motif throughout it, and it plays into that hard, both the highs and the lows, so take from that what you will. For now, though, we should get into spoilers, yes?
Let's do it.
But before we do get into spoilers, as always, if you're enjoying the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes. Tell friends about us. It's the only way we grow. Follow us on Twitter at BADH_cast. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/BADHcast. Next week, oh my God, y'all. Holy shit, I'm gonna come, because we're going from Uncut Gems, one of my favorite movies of recent memory, to Snowpiercer, another of my favorite movies of recent memory. I fucking love Snowpiercer. It is Parasite and Snowpiercer, the only two Bong Joon-ho movies I have seen. I need to go watch more of them because I adore both of these movies so fucking much. Snowpiercer is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's great. Please, if you haven't watched it, go watch it before we get into the conversation next week, because I also think I have some hot takes for y'all, and I'm hoping I'm gonna rock some brains here. Come back for that.
Damn. Let's go.
Jackson, I'll let you start out here. Talk about Howard for a minute.
So Howard, I feel like we come back to this motif fairly frequently because it's a subject that I'm interested in, as far as vis-a-vis a unlikable protagonist, or a protagonist that is hard to root for, or a protagonist that's shitty, however you want to phrase that. Because, there is an art to it in that you have to ride that line. You have to find a way to make your story engaging and make us feel the humanity of this person that is otherwise a piece of shit. And I think the thing about this movie, and I'm gonna make a lot. I was thinking about Wolf of Wall Street a lot during this, and I didn't, to be clear, I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies, period. So I'm not necessarily criticizing it, more just illustrating the difference in the approach. So both Wolf of Wall Street and Uncut Gems have shitty, misogynistic, crazy wrecks of human beings as protagonists. But for a lot of Wolf of Wall Street, while there are parts where you're obviously meant to feel like, oh, Jordan's crossed a line here, or oh my god, what an irredeemable piece of shit. There are moments that are more explicit like that. Or where you're kind of laughing at the character for how dumb what's going on is. But there are also a lot of times in Wolf of Wall Street where you are very clearly meant to laugh along with the character, even when that is not necessarily a good thing. There definitely are a lot of parts of Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort may be a total piece of shit, but man, oh man, look at his car, look at his sick parties, look at all this shit that he has, what a Chad, am I right, gamers?
Which, to the movie's credit, there is a amount of awareness to that and, kind of condemning the audience for thinking that throughout it. So,
yes.
Yeah, I'm just, for those of you who might not have seen it, it is not as aggrandizing as it might seem. It is very aware of what it is doing and playing with your expectations in that way.
Yeah, it's that process of audience identification. It's something, whether or not you do think that maybe the movie glorifies the lifestyle too much, it is at least very clearly interested in playing with that boundary. As I said, Wolf of Wall Street's one of my favorite movies. I think if there weren't those moments where you're laughing along and seeing yourself with them, I don't think the movie would work at all. By contrast, to take again, a character who is similarly sort of reprehensible, I never once look at Howard and think, man, what a Chad, or man, I would like to be him. Even when maybe he's cracking a joke, or has a good one-liner or a good quip, it's always you're always kind of on the outside looking in, and that you can see the greater context and see things pile up from the outside.
That goes, I'm excited to talk about that. That's an exciting, I'm going to come back to that in a minute here. You said something that I like. I'll tell you what.
I'm excited now. I'm excited. But I guess just to finish my thought, when I look at Howard, there is never a moment. Not only is there never a moment where I look at him and think what a Chad, and even moments where it threatens to do that, look at his hot mistress, then he has his son at walking in and finding out about that, and him panicking and trying to cover that up, and
even before that, him going out of his way to not let his son go into the into his apartment, into his love nest, and sicking him on his neighbors, and the social anxiety I got from watching him knock on random people's door and be like, "Hi, we've never met. Can my son take a shit in your bathroom?" is so high.
No, for sure. Basically, it's so obvious very early on, very quickly, you kind of pick up on the fact that this is a sick man. This is a man with problems, and it really does feel like you are watching someone you care about implode. And just despite yourself, you are watching a deeply wounded person who needs help and cannot help but self-destruct. And there's something, it's funny because it's a different sort of thing. Whereas I don't know if the movie is asking me to see a ton of myself in Howard, but I nonetheless
I can't imagine it would be, honestly. I think it's far more just like, look at this sad man, don't you feel sad for him?
No, yeah, and like, because there's those explicit elements, like the scene where he's like, his nose is bleeding and he finally like breaks down. Like, that's a great scene.
I'm so fucked up. I'm so fucked up.
So fucked up.
So much of this movie, just as an aside, if you somehow did not see it, has been used as reaction images on Twitter, like all through last winter, for good reason. This movie is the most fucking memeable movie of all time. And like, not in a haha, look at this memeable movie type of way, but like, I respect this fucking movie type of way.
That's a real gut punch too. Like, it's amazing that like I hadn't really seen much of the Twitter memes except for Sean used one on me once. So when that happened in the movie, when he said I disagree, I clapped when I saw it.
I disagree.
But yeah, like, but even before like things get explicit there, like, just watching him make bad decision after bad decision, like getting his family involved, getting his like father-in-law or brother-in-law, or whoever that was involved, his little scheme. Like, that's kind of a funny scene, this idea of like, you know, old like Orthodox Jewish grandpa like getting involved in this like scheme for this fucking stone and getting, you know, completely blown the fuck out over it. But that's also really sad because like, you know, everything was kind of hinging on like, you know, his little scheme working, and you know, now we can see just how things self-destruct even more.
The movie is really, really good at making you root for Howard. Like, come on, if he gets this, he's gonna get out. We know he's gonna get out. If all he needs to do is he needs to hit this bet, he needs the stone to sell, and it'll be great. It'll all be good. He'll be fine. And then it rips the carpet out from under you, either because Howard is a fuck up, or because the movie just doesn't hit the way you're expecting it to, and you constantly are just hoping, praying that this is you think he's gonna change. You know, I can change him. You know, I know he's not a great guy, but I can change him if we're together. You know, I love him, and I can do this. But you can't change Howard Ratner. He's so fucked up. He's so fucked up.
And it's pivotal. This is sort of a pet peeve of mine, not a criticism that I've actually seen, but like, I imagine people could have this criticism that someone would say like, oh, like he finally sells the stone to Kevin Garnett, and yet he immediately like yeets his money away. Now, obviously, like we know that's the point of the movie, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying that like anyone, hell, probably anyone involved, like listening to this even probably understands that. But I see that criticism a lot of like, you know, a thing is bad because a character makes a bad decision. But
Prometheus.
But yeah, like it would be especially egregious here with it, because that's the cycle of addiction, right? Is that like, even when there is a very like clean opportunity to just like break and get away from it all, most addicts cannot and will not do it. And so the way that those final like 15 minutes like play out, like I can see, I guess another criticism that I disagree with would be people thinking that last bet when he's got them like, you know, trapped in the door bay with his brother-in-law and the goons and stuff.
Can we talk about the Yahoo who takes out a cigarette though while they're in there? They're all really hot and sweaty, and then someone's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just light up here. Don't worry about me." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Listen, man, speaking of addicts, you know, sometimes like you're fiending for that nicotine.
You know, as I was saying it, I'm like, God damn it, this plays into the theme that Jackson is talking about right now, but also.
No, I was thinking that too. Yeah, like I could see someone saying like, ooh, like, you know, after the climax, like, Howard finally sells the stone, like, you know, he's after being dangled out a window, he's got his money, and like the movie feels like it has like an extra, it's going on too long, like we got you know, we're still dragging this out. No, like, you know, we don't just need, like, it would be unsatisfying if Howard got killed after like fucking up the bet, like, you know, like not being able to sell the stone, and like, you know, they like beat him up and they shot him. Like, that's less thematically cogent than Howard is on the precipice of being able to save himself and then yeets it all away and then gets shot when he wins the bet, and that's when it catches up with him. And it's such a good ending, and like it's so like quick and brutal that like even though you're on like, you know, pins and needles the whole time because these goons are like, you know, waiting like as soon as he opens the cage to come after him, when he does pull out the gun and just domes him, it really is like a Greek tragedy. Like it's a heavily flawed character that, like, nonetheless, it hurts to see him brought down by his own actions, his own hubris, his fatal flaw. You know, it's classic stuff. It's older than fucking the written word.
Sam, as she was watching this, to your credit of, you know, why didn't it end sooner, or the type of opinion, I would say she didn't enjoy it. She respected the movie for what it was, but it's not really her cup of tea. And I kind of knew that going in. I was just kind of curious to hear her opinion of it. But I remember her saying many times, she's like, this movie is just frustrating, which if the tension doesn't grab you, I can see why it would just be a frustrating movie. And like that would lend itself to that final payoff of him selling the money to go gamble some more, Words, sentence. Fuck yeah, man. Fuck yeah, let's go. But no, giving away the money to go gamble some more, like, would be really frustrating. Just like, oh my God, why is this not over yet? But I think that frustration, is very much part of the movie. That frustration of like, God, this needs to end. He needs to stop. What the fuck? And that's really good. But also, she called it. She's like, listen, I know what's going to happen. You know, he's going to sell the money to Kevin Garnett, and then, you know, he's going to go bet and he's going to lose it all, and it's going to be the end of the movie. And I just kind of looked at her, and I kind of like, I didn't really respond. I just kind of looked at her, and I'm like, I can't answer that, because she was kind of right, but she was also so wrong. So when the bullpen did open and the dude came out and shot him, she was just it will stick with me forever, because she shot him and I heard her go to my right, and I'm just like, perfection. Just perfection.
No, and since I've spent the last couple of minutes like attacking straw men, basically, allow me to clarify. I think that Sam's perspective is really valid, because that's kind of the bargain that you make when you make a movie about like an unlikable character, like a character that's hard to root for, is that no matter what you do, no matter like how thoughtful you are, or no matter like what subtleties you include, there are always going to be members of the audience who just are frustrated and like can't get behind it on like a core like emotional level, and that's fine. That's just dandy. But I think that's an important element to acknowledge, that I think individual people have more or less of a tolerance for this kind of movie featuring this kind of character.
Basically, if it doesn't click with you, it's not your fault. You're just a terrible person.
You know, I'm not going to use the word Philistine, but I could use the word Philistine. Oh, man. So I want to hear, because I said something that gave you a brain blast. I'm curious about that, but I'm also curious about your sports thesis. So I'm going to hand the floor to you.
So I'm going to start off with my brain blast moment, because my brain blast moment kind of segues into my sports thesis. And to start this off with, I have spent a lot of time thinking about Adam Sandler's asshole. And what I mean by that is this movie opens up with a pan into the uncut black opal that turns from like this beautiful worldwide universal type thing going on in the black opal into a colonoscopy of Adam Sandler's Howard Ratner before it pulls out of his butthole. And yeah, so I've been thinking about that a lot. Conversely, the movie ends after Howard has been shot. The camera then pans back into Howard through the bullet hole and into the space visage that was the opening of the movie. And that's something that like I've been thinking a lot about. And I had originally a thesis about it that ties into the sports metaphor that I'll get to in a hot second, I promise. But for the context of, you know, looking from the outside in on Howard Ratner, there's references throughout the film that like when you look into the Uncut Black Opal, you can see universes in there. And I think that what we're seeing here is on a very, very literal level, we are going from the outside world, looking in on the universe of Howard Ratner, who is so far up his own ass, the movie begins with a colonoscopy, before eventually leaving through the bullet hole back to the universe of the rest of our world. And I don't have a big thesis about that. Like most things that I come to this podcast bringing, I just think that's neat.
That is neat. No, that's really great. I actually, it's a lot happens in this movie. It's a testament to how much happened in this movie that I forgot it opened on a colonoscopy. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I guess while I'm thinking about it though, this isn't a criticism or anything, but does
Too
A24
much Howard Adam Sandler ass? Is that the problem?
Well,
or not enough Adam Sandler ass?
I mean, their mileage may vary on that. But my thought was this. Does A24 have only one guy who composes music? Does he compose music for all of them? Because I feel like every A24 movie has like that synthy, like kind of off-kilter soundtrack. And it's not a bad thing. I like the soundtrack in this movie. But like, I just like, man, I'm having flashbacks to like 30 other A24 movies I've seen at this point.
I mean, I think more than anything, what it boils down to is A24 is just kind of a vibe of a company.
Yeah.
And that vibe is kind of off-kilter synth music, to be fair.
I mean, that is fair, but like I actually was genuinely curious. I forgot about this point until you mentioned the universe, like more like heady stuff. I actually wanted to look up how many movies this composer would have been for, if any, So
I do think that there is a number of them that do not have that. But I do think the ones that we have talked about definitely seem to fall under that vibe in a lot of ways.
For sure, yeah.
And I love A24. A24 is like one of my favorite studio houses out there. Fuck, man, a good A24 movie.
Oh God, they're putting out like the best movies. Even when I don't really like them, they're still like interesting to talk about. Like,
oh yeah, no, I mean they are, if nothing else, a discussion piece, even if they are bad. So that's more than I can say about a lot of film right now. Well, back when there was film happening and before in the before times.
before the end times. Before Adam Sandler woke the dreamer.
So let's talk about sports here for a minute, which is
sports.
Another sentence I never thought I would be saying. I have thought about this. There's one particular line in this movie that I have thought about a lot, and I actually missed it on rewatch, and I'm kind of bummed about that, but it has stuck with me from my first viewing. And at one point, someone makes a comment about how basketball games all come down to the final 2 minutes. Nothing that happens before matters. It's only the last 2 minutes. And on my first watch, I was obsessed with this line. Like, this happens about the midway point or earlier. And I spent the rest of the movie being like, as tense as I was, thinking, none of this matters. None of this matters. What's going to happen? None of this matters. And, sure enough, none of it matters. Adam Sandler gets shot in the head. End of movie. Which is some really wonderful kind of subtle foreshadowing that, like, if you're the person who picked up on it and it gets stuck in your craw the way it did with mine for whatever reason, it's really an interesting payoff. But it's also the type of thing that got me thinking about how this movie is structured incredibly similarly to something you might see on a basketball game. Or you wouldn't see this on a basketball game. It's just structured similarly to a basketball game. And I have just a long list of reasons as to why that is. And we'll start from the biggest to the more minute, which is to say, Kevin Garnett's there. That's a pretty big one.
True.
On a more granular level, basketballs are sometimes known as The Rock. And they even, at the end, there's a kind of little playful moment where Kevin Garnett makes a comment about how, like, yeah, I was so focused on The Rock. And what one is he referring to? Who knows? That's kind of a little playful tongue in cheek of like, because the ending footage is of Garnett Kevin Garnett at the 2012 championship game, or like game 7 of 8, or I don't know basketball. Fuck, why am I talking? But it's live footage of him actually saying, like, I was just focused on The Rock. And I like that the movie itself kind of plays with like this double entendre of The Rock of being both the basketball and the titular Rock of the film, which gets passed back and forth throughout the movie the entire time as it kind of changes sides as to who has the Rock in their side of the court, be it Adam Sandler or Kevin Garnett. Because Kevin Garnett is honestly weirdly kind of the antagonist of this movie in his own way. He is the person that Adam Sandler is playing against other than himself. He mostly plays against himself, but Kevin Garnett a lot of times is the one who has the gem, and Adam Sandler needs that gem. Which leads me to some of the other characters, specifically the Keith Stanfield. There's one scene where they're in a club and everyone is just incredibly muted throughout the whole thing. Like it's a blacklit club, and so a lot of people really blend into the background, except for like Keith Stanfield, who's wearing a bright, vibrant orange sweater. And Sam even pointed out, and she's like, "What's the deal with that?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And then I kept thinking about it. I'm like, "I think I have an idea," in that the only person passing the ball back and forth between them is Lakeith Stanfield, essentially a referee for the game, deciding which side gets the ball at this moment. And like the referees are designed to stand out, and no character stands out in this moment more than Lakeith Stanfield in this bright fucking orange shirt. So you've got the characters, you've got The Rock, you've got Kevin Garnett there. You have the tempo of the game, which is just a general like up and down of like, oh yeah, my team's ahead. Oh, my team's down. Oh yeah, we're just gonna ride that high of being ahead and just be happy about it. Oh, we're gonna be sad about it being low. Like the general vibe of the movie is that of peaks and valleys and riding plateaus of watching a basketball game. I assume I don't watch basketball, but that's the general vibe I got. Again, I am kind of talking out my ass here, but I think I'm providing enough evidence as someone who doesn't watch sports. I hope that this makes sense.
I was gonna say I'm buying it.
Yeah, no, I feel like I'm doing a decent job here, but someone can come in and just be like, "Yo, you clearly have no idea what the fuck you're talking about," and I will have no option but to be like, "Yes, you're right." So yeah, you have the general lulls and highs and lows of the basketball game that I feel works really well, especially, and it does tie into that the last 2 minutes are the only thing that matters in a basketball game. In this case, it absolutely does, which leaves 3 pieces of the puzzle left that I've been mulling about for a year now. And that is the exit scene out to the universe, the intro scene from the universe to Howard Ratner's ass, as well as the kind of setup with oh my god, the melee mine, something along those lines. The mine is what it boils down to, the mine scene. And I've been kind of mulling those over for a while. And I actually came up with the answer for the universe scenes really quickly, but it's just recently that I'm like, you know, that kind of that mine kind of feels like, is it kind of feels like the sponsorship role ahead of a game, you know, kind of setting up how we got here, who's providing the funding to let the rest of this movie go on before cutting into a bunch of obnoxious logos in the form of a gem that pans out to Howard Ratner's ass that, you know, punctuates both sides of like the ESPN big flashy logos going in like empty space and like whoosh 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 ESPN, it's in the game, EA Sports, all that shit. Again, I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but I do know that these are things that happen on each end of sports games with things on either side of it. That's my major thesis about this movie, is that this movie is not just tangentially about basketball. It is in fact a giant basketball game between Kevin Garnett and Howard Ratner. End thesis.
A year in the making. Hell yeah. That's what I like to hear. Oh my god. No, I mean, again, I'm not a sportsman, but I buy it. I'm sold.
I have seen movie writers who actually know what sports are talk about this before in a way that really does back up what I'm saying here. I've just kind of extrapolated on some of the other stuff. Like some of the articles I've read have just been like more smaller details about it. But like I've been, again, thinking about this movie a lot just because I think this is a really interesting thesis on like how the movie is structured in a way to remind viewers of a basketball game. That is just a fascinating thing. Like it's a movie that is doing one thing while being another at the same time. And that's not something you really see that often, at least not in such overtly subtle ways. And yes, I realized I did just say overtly subtle, but it kind of works if you think about it.
Ooh. I don't have anything productive to add.
That's all I have to say about Uncut Gems here. I fucking adore this movie. Go watch this movie. If you haven't seen it and you've listened to us talk about it, you still do not have the Uncut Gems experience. Go watch Uncut Gems, you buffoons.
We're leaving out so much. Why'd you listen past the spoiler section, Dirk Dingus?
I'm so upset that you're back on Twitter.
Yeah, speaking of that,
I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Yeah.
and I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me on Twitter at Jackson J. Keller, where I tweet Dirk Dingus, which is just a funny name from a Donkey video. But I also did a big old tier list of all the Mario games and a one tweet review of each. So that's actual content. That's something you could digest. So do it. Follow me already.
It's a big old tweet chain. This boy's knows his Mario shit pretty damn well. So go check that shit out. Also, if you want to follow the podcast, it's at BADH_cast on Twitter. We mostly tweet about like updates, stuff that's coming up, things that are happening. Not super interesting stuff, but if you want to get in contact with Jackson and I, the best place to do so is to join our Discord. And the only way to do that is to go over to patreon.com/BADHcast and give us $1 a month. It gets access to our Discord so you can come yell at us about Uncut Gems and tell me that I have no idea what sports are, because you're correct, I do not. $5 a month gets access to our Discord as well as our backlog of bonus episodes. We got a ton of really fucking great episodes out there. They're only for our patrons. You should definitely go subscribe and check those out. $10 a month gets access to our backlog of bonus episodes, our Discord, as well as the ability to request bonus episodes. And we need one for November still. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, here's a great movie that you guys should go watch, hit us up. It also gets you a little something.
Thank you so much, Julia, Travis, Pat, Mom, Aunt Summer. This is how you win.
Also, thanks to those that high reviews of our theme song, Suicide, also to take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band, and you should go check them out however you can. They are now on Bandcamp. That's a brand new thing that they're doing. So please go support them. Artists are struggling right now. Your local theaters, your local actors, all them people, please support them however you can. Also, thanks to 25yearslaterstate.com. There's a little button of us in the corner, but you should definitely go check out everyone over there. There's a bunch of really talented writers doing a bunch of really talented writing that you should definitely go read. Next week, as I said, we're talking about Snowpiercer, and I could not be happier.
This is not related to Snowpiercer, but I just like gaslit myself into thinking I kept calling Adam Sandler Ben Franklin throughout this podcast.
Wait, no, hang on. Ben Franklin? Not Ben Stiller. Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin, because he was the answer on Final Jeopardy the other night.
I am actively sitting here trying to figure out how you got Adam Sandler and Ben Franklin conflated, because I'm like, okay, so maybe Ben Stiller and then Nicolas Cage in National Treasure was interested in Ben Franklin. His last name was Franklin in that. Ben Franklin. Neither one of those really have a direct tie to Adam Sandler except for Ben Stiller does. So maybe you're thinking Ben Franklin, Ben Stiller, Adam Sandler. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go